Here's the story. We have this from the Daily Wire. CIA officer admits to undercover journalist that FBI agents attended January 6th protest at Capitol. When asked if the public will ever find out, the officer responded, nope, and they probably never will. This is wild. An official with the CIA told an undercover journalist that members of the FBI were in attendance at the protest at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and also highlighted methods that intelligence agencies use to disempower political opponents. Notably in this, and we will get into this moving through the story, he said that they effectively educated the public as to how to go after Alex Jones, chopping off his legs and taking his money away, leaving them satisfied, it having been done, which is a wild thing to say. But we'll start here. We'll talk about what's going on with this January 6th claim. Gavin O'Blennis, a self-proclaimed contracting officer for the CIA and former member of the FBI, was caught on camera by an undercover journalist with Sound Investigations as he discussed January 6th. O'Blennis claimed that former President Donald Trump incited a riot before going on to say that roughly 20 undercover FBI agents were in the crowd. Quote, I thought you said there were FBI agents in the crowd at J6. The undercover journalist asked O'Blennis, quote, there are. There always are when there's a big protest in D.C., just in case it gets out of hand like that. He responded before going on to say, there wasn't enough to turn the tide. I'm talking we had maybe 20. You need 1,000 to get rid of that crowd. Just to go through to observe to see what they can hear. You know, that kind of thing. The video also shows O'Blennis affirming that the FBI didn't want the public to know that they had agents embedded in the crowd and saying that he personally knows agents who were in attendance. They work for the agency now, he said about the former FBI agents, referencing the CIA. Do people know that the Bureau was in the crowd? The undercover Sound Investigation journalist asked, with O'Blennis responding, nope, and they probably never will. FBI Director Christopher Wray previously stated in a congressional hearing concerning January 6th that he was not sure there were undercover agents on the scene, doubling down in an answer to Rep. Andy Biggs, saying, I do not believe that there were undercover agents on the scene. We'll start here and I'll say this. It was always insane to argue there were no undercover agents on January 6th. There are undercover agents at every single protest ever. And if there aren't, they're not doing their jobs. So we know the question is, to what degree did they have undercover agents there? Did the undercover agents have any role in enticing, inciting, or instigating violence? That's what people want to know. And because they've continually lied about it, people are going to start assuming the worst.
I kind of look at it like, I'm trying to get an objective perspective from like the current government. They're like, okay, we got this insurgent guy, this Trump guy who we can't stand. We don't want him to win. He's got a rowdy crowd outside the Capitol. Let's get some guys out there. Maybe let's move it along. I'm saying hypothetically, this would be a tactic you could use to move things along. And you're like, let's just get these guys to break some windows and bust up stuff. And it didn't even get it got a little violent. It did, but I didn't get like bodies on the ground. Like I was talking to my dad about it, and like Jacob Chansley, the shaman in there dancing or singing, probably potentially saved a lot of lives by keeping people really calm, because there was a lot of potential for things to go real aggro and machine guns to get opened up. So like, it really wasn't that horrific as like riots can be in a city's capital. Well, especially a nation's capital.
They don't need undercovers to start violence. So right. I was in Ferguson, and it was a bunch of people dancing in the street. There had been riots, don't get me wrong. They burned down a gas station. This protest had been going on. And on this particular night, I can't remember which night it was, there were people just dancing in the street. Nothing was really happening. I was walking up and down West Florissant Avenue. And then all of a sudden, a cop walked up and just chucked a flashbang at a group of people standing there doing nothing. Instantly, there was a riot. There was no reason for the cops to do that.
It doesn't take much either. Like a couple of cops push a few guys and then, or break a window and then scream, go, we're going, you know, that kind of thing. And that's really kind of all it takes to get the mob moving.
There were people in Ferguson who were not from Ferguson who wanted to just smash and grab. And as long as people were just dancing in the street, nothing was happening. As soon as this cop chucked a flashbang, just underhanded it right into the crowd, it created panic and chaos of people screaming, and then instantly the smash and grabbers ran up to the stores, smashed and started stealing everything, and then all hell broke loose. I do not understand why a police officer would do that for any reason. Now, as for January 6th, to bring it back to J6, you don't need undercover people to have started this conflict. Many people have pointed out that it was the police that started shooting rubber bullets and throwing flashbangs at people before any fighting even started, which triggered fighting.
Is that true? Because I've heard that also.
I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying there are people who are claiming, you know, that's what instigated the fight. I'm saying in my experience, I have seen instances where police have done this, and there are people posting videos they purport shows before any fighting starts, a cop throws a flashbang or fires a rubber bullet or something to that effect, which is a guy in uniform does it. The other thing to point out for J6, most of the people who are being charged were not part of the riot. There was a riot on one side of the building. Those people should be criminally charged for being violent and for storming through the barricades and all that. And then there were people who on the other side of the building had the door opened. There's police officers standing at the door. There's one video where the cop holds open the door as protesters walk in. This is not an exaggeration. In fact, it was so obvious and egregious that one individual was acquitted of all charges because a judge said, yeah, that cop's waving him in. And there's videos of cops taking selfies with people. There's videos of people on J6 asking officers if they need help. Tell me what's going on. Can I help you? And those people still get criminally charged.
Yeah, I don't even really, I mean, I'm not going to claim one way or the other if the FBI or anybody like we're instigating this thing. It could have just been the crowd got rowdy and they, least worst scenario, they let it happen. They were like, let's just let some windows get broken so we can use this as a, you know, as a casus belli to go after Trump to make sure he doesn't get elected or whatever the case.
He was, I mean,
worst case scenario, they instigated it.
But the thing is, like with the Trump stuff, like it was about the certification of the election. Like it was already like as soon as like when January 6th happened, there was never a question about whether or not Joe Biden was going to be certified, and he was no. Well, there was no on January 6th. There was never an option. Like in the real world, there was because they were going to call they were going to call the National Guard in. Like it wasn't going to be where Donald Trump might
not through force. But this one, I'm wondering. Mike Pence had the opportunity to send the electors back to the states because of what Pennsylvania done by changing the election against their constitution.
But they were never going to let it happen.
Who's they?
Like the federal government.
Yeah,
who's now we're just derailed. It's the federal government. Look, essentially, the government's position was this is done. Right? That's the government's position. And they were never going to let that ever change. There was no option. There was no maybe this will work. It was just never going to happen. It was a riot. The people that were rioting were expecting to be treated the way that Antifa had been treated all year. They obviously weren't going to be treated like that because it was the federal government that was like, oh, you're attacking us. And so there was never an option that like the government might actually have Donald Trump manage to get in. That was never real.
And Ian, that was just absolutely wrong. Okay. When asking who is they, you have to say who is they though.
Who is they though?
Okay. But your point is actually was not bad.
Is that true? So Mike Pence
though.
has the opportunity, and he has a duty as the vice president to, if something is up with the electorates, for whatever reason, he's supposed to send them back to the states to do it again.
He could.
He could. Oh, so he can say, yeah, even though it was
not
messed
anymore,
up.
He can't. After this, they passed a bill saying, okay, now you can't.
They passed a bill saying the vice president can't do that. And then they said that was something he couldn't have done. But in fact, no, he could have back before you passed the bill.
Absolutely can. There's a reason why the role exists. It's the craziest thing. These people are zombies. They're in a cult. Okay. When we say the vice president will count the votes, it's because he could be like, no. And it's like, okay, well, then what? He has to. And if he doesn't, you're in an impasse. Then you will need a legal remedy for that constitutional crisis. So Mike Pence, because he's just, I don't know, he's a bumbling dotard, didn't care. He's like, whatever. Path of least resistance, man. That's what this country is all about.
I believe that it was a path of least resistance, but I wouldn't be surprised if people went to it when they're like, dude, I want to play for the rest of your life.
And there had been Republicans who had requested that they, like members of their state legislature who had said, this is improper. Yeah. We want to answer this. And Mike Pence was like, nah.
I don't think that it was actually that Mike Pence did was the path of least resistance. I do think that the Supreme Court, by not hearing Texas's case, by saying we're not going to hear this, I think that was where the path of least resistance, because the last thing that the Supreme Court wants to do is chime in on any of that stuff. They don't want to be the reason that someone was elected. There's already those kind of accusations surrounding George Bush from 2000, right? There are people out there that say the Supreme Court decided it. Whether or not you agree with that is besides the point.
I want to add this context. I think it's very important. Kyle Serafin, who we've had on the show, I believe more than once, maybe not, says, if this confirms so many things you thought you weren't thinking, This guy's my age. She was checking in patients at the VA when I started as an FBI agent, and I was 10 years older than many. In 2022, he was a secretary at the FBI. Be skeptical, people. Geez. So we take a look and we can see this guy, Gavin O'Blennis, who's in currently at the Department of Homeland Security. Let's see. Does he have his career path? Here we say from December 2022 until the present, he's an immigration services analyst at the DHS. He was at the Bureau from June 2022 to December 2022, only 7 months. Oh, I'm sorry. That was wrong. From May 2021 to December 2022, he had two different jobs. He started as an operations technician and then became a procurement specialist. Before that, he was at the VA. Fair point. Maybe he was just a secretary checking people in. That's fine. But I do think it's fair to point out that when he says, at least according to the Daily Wire's writing of this, he knew people who were there on the ground and they're now working for the agency and that he's at the agency. I think we have a credible source. This is a guy who worked for the FBI. He was an analyst. Call him a secretary. Sure. Would a secretary know about the goings on of FBI agents? Yeah, he sounds like he could and maybe would. So at the very least, yes, absolutely be skeptical because this could be some dude who was working the mailroom, who knows what garbage he was doing at the FBI. Yeah. Someone contacts him wanting to go on a date, and then he starts talking all this big game because he's trying to get laid. However, I don't think on a date you need to admit to these things, right? So this is kind of the joke that we make about James O'Keefe. Like, James will send, like, some young woman will go, like, meet a guy on Tinder or something, and she'll be like, ooh, so what do you do for a living? And he's like, I work for the government. And then she goes, oh, yeah? Do anything interesting? Ha! Let me tell you about all the corrupt actions we take for no reason. Like, you don't need to claim to do corrupt things in order to win someone over on a date. Like, this guy didn't need to say he was targeting Alex Jones. They had undercover agents on J6. He didn't need to say that. I don't know why he would make that up.
Yeah, it's a bold thing to make up.
But also let's clarify too, like, if I can understand if you're a guy on a date and you're talking to someone, I think this guy's gay, I'm not sure, and you're talking to someone and you say something like, I'm very rich and successful and I own very many cars, like that I get you lie about. You know, like those are Trump kind of lies where Trump's like, I got a hole in one. Everyone knows it. It's true. Trust me. I got to make sure I tell everybody.
The best kind of lies.
I mean, honestly, Trump probably did get a hole in one. I think he was super excited for that. So good for him. You know, I'm very proud. But Trump's kind of lies are like the embellishment of the size or value of his buildings. Yeah. And that's what you'd say to impress somebody. You wouldn't come out. Like, could you imagine if Trump was like meeting with someone was like, yeah, let me tell you how great I am. I commit fraud all the time. Here's how I do it. Here's documents proving it. You'd be like, what? You don't need to do that.
Maybe this guy wanted to blow the whistle deep down and he just did it on a date.
This is what James O'Keefe was saying, that many of these people are very guilty inside and they need someone to tell them they did good. You know what I mean? Like, they did something wrong and they desperately want someone to say, no, what you're doing is good. Thank you for doing it. Like going after Alex Jones, targeting him to take his money from him. I have to imagine that your average person, knowing that they're lying and manipulating the circumstances to destroy someone's life, no matter who it is, might feel bad about it and desperately want to be told you're a good guy and you're doing the right thing because they're guilty. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.